Hi, this is Professor Salazar. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can create a simple interest calculator using Python. Uh, we're going to be using Visual Studio Code for coding in Python, and all I'm going to show you is just a few easy steps that you can take to create your simple interest calculator. So before we get started, I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And I'm going to go to Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to create a new file called interest calculator.py. You always need to have the .py extension at the end. And once you have that, then you can start coding in Python. So the first step is to ask the user to enter the principal amount or enter the initial amount of money. The second step is going to prompt the user to enter their rate of interest in a percentage. The third thing we're going to have to do is prompt the user to enter the time in years for which the money is borrowed or lent. The fourth thing we're going to have to do is calculate the simple interest using a formula. And the last step is to print out the message to the user with their calculated simple interest. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do this. On the first step, if I need to ask the user to enter the amount of interest for the user, I'm going to create a variable called principal. I'm going to equal it to a float input. And I'm going to say, enter the principal amount borrowed. Okay. And here I'll go ahead and put a $sign right before the closed double quote. And that's just to signify that this is going to be a currency amount. And I'm actually asking for a float because I'm also allowing the user to type in a decimal value for the principal. Okay. On the next step, I'm going to get the user to enter the interest rate. So I'm going to create a variable called rate, and I'm going to equal it to a float input. And I'm going to ask the user to enter the interest rate. So enter the interest rate. All right. And I'll go ahead and put here in percentage. Okay. Actually, I believe this would still work even if it wasn't a percentage. But if in case I need to convert it to a percentage, I can tell the user, well, no, I'm only going to ask for an integer right here. And then I can change it over to a float. Or I could just ask the user to just enter a float here. Or I can tell the user, hey, I'm accepting either an integer or a float. All right. So I'll go ahead and say enter the interest rate in percentage. And by the way, as I'm thinking about this, we might not actually want to tell the user enter the interest rate in percentage. They might actually put it as a percentage. But I'll leave that up to the user. And then I'll say in step 3, enter the time in years. So this is going to be in the time in years that the money is actually borrowed or lent. And I'm going to type in time equals int input, enter the time in years, or maybe I can say enter the number of years for which the money is borrowed. Okay. Now you'll notice that on line 3, I'm only asking the user for an integer, not a float. That means that this has to be a number like 1, 2, 3, 10. It has to be a number. It cannot have a decimal value. So it cannot have 1.5, 3.10, 2.8. It cannot have that decimal value if I'm only accepting an integer. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate the simple interest. So I'm going to type in interest equals the principal times the rate times the time, and I'm going to divide that by 100. And what I want to happen first, and I know this is probably true, like I don't need parentheses around these, but I want this to be calculated first. I want the principal times the rate times the time to be calculated first. And then I want to divide that by 100. And I know that according to the order of operation, we probably don't need parentheses around it, but this is just to show myself and anyone else who may be looking at my code. This is really important here. If I'm going to calculate the interest, I want this to be calculated first. Principal times rate times time divided by 100. And then for step 5, the last step would be to print out the interest to the user, display the results. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in print, and I'm going to use the F string right here because I'm going to format this string and display the results of interest into this string. So I'm going to start that by typing print, open parentheses, F, double quote, and inside the double quotes, I'm going to say something like the amount of interest you will need to pay is, and here I'm going to open up a brace, and within the braces, I'm going to type in the word interest. Okay. And right before the open brace, I'm going to use a $sign just to represent that this is currency that we're using. Okay. And you'll notice that this formatted string is really just bringing over the value of interest that's been calculated on line 4. You'll also notice that a formatted string starts with an F followed by the string. This is what you would call an F string. Okay. So let's see what this looks like, and let's see if we get different values for this. I'm going to go ahead and run this. And it asked me to enter the principal amount borrowed. So let's say, for example, I'm going to borrow $2,000. And it asked me for the interest rate. Well, is this interest rate in percentage, or is this going to be calculated as a percentage, right? Like we really don't know as of yet what we're going to do. But if I type in, let's say, for example, 2% of an interest rate, well, is that going to be an integer of 2, or is that going to be a 0.02 for the interest rate of 2%? And we can kind of do our math and find out in a little bit here. But I'm going to go ahead and type in 2. And now it asks me for the number of years for which the money is borrowed. I'm going to say 2 years here. And then it shows me the amount of interest you will need to pay is $80. So here I misspelled the, I'm going to type in a capital T, H, E. And you'll notice that here it says the amount, the interest you'll need to pay is $80. Now, is that correct? If I were to multiply 2,000 by 2, then that would give me 4,000. But 4,000 times 2 would give me an 8,000. And 8,000 divided by 100 equals 80. So I know that that's correct right there. The only real question is, would I have gotten a different value if the interest rate was 0.02 as a percentage, right? So when you type in 0.02, that's not actually as a percentage, okay? That's just the decimal point that acts as a percentage, okay? The actual percentage would be 2%, okay? And I'm going to show you this because we actually get different values when we type in a 0.02. Now here on line 6, you'll notice also that I typed in, or let me say this, you didn't see a blank line right here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a blank line by typing in a \n right before this sentence. And when I run it again, it's asking me to enter the principal amount borrowed. I'm going to type in the same $2,000. But for the interest rate, now I'm going to type in 0.02. And that's different because that's not actually 2%. If we were to ask somebody enter the amount of principal in, or I'm sorry, if we were to ask somebody enter the interest rate as a percentage, well, they wouldn't have to type in 0.02 because as a percentage, we could just type in 2. All right. If we did not want to display it as a percentage and we needed to calculate the interest, we would have to type in 0.02. And let's say I'm using 0.02 as my percentage and I type in for 2 years. Notice how there's a blank line because I typed in a \n on line 6. But I also got the amount of interest you will need to pay is 0.8, which would be 80 cents, which that would not be correct. If we were to represent 0.02 as a percentage, that would equal 0.02%. All right. So that's actually not correct. What I would like for to see here is if it's going to ask you a percentage, it just type in 2. All right. And I could have gone farther in this. I could have probably added the interest to the principal so that the user would actually know, hey, not only did you have to pay this principal back, but you also have to pay the amount of interest back. All right. So I'll just keep going on this one and I'll say print f string. And I'm not actually going to plug in a new line here, but I'm going to type in the total amount that you will need to pay is, I'm going to type in the currency, $, and I'm going to type in the braces. Now it's actually waiting for me to type in something here, right? But I haven't actually calculated the total yet. So I'm going to type in total owed equals principal plus interest. Okay. Now here within the braces on line 8, I could just bring over total owed. Okay. Now if I run this, we should see that if I plug in the same values, the total owed should be $2,080. So let's run this, enter the principal amount borrowed, $2,000, enter the interest rate at 2%, and enter the number of years for which money is borrowed. I'm going to type in 2 years. And it says the amount of interest you will need to pay is $80, and the total amount that you need to pay is $2,080. So that's how you would create a simple interest calculator in Python. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Thank you for watching this video. And if you have any questions, please send me an email. If you'd like this video, just click the like button and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.